Captain Jaiwo Park stood tall as she faced the Galactic Council. The crystal dome room was huge, filled with over 30 different alien species. Most of them looked down at the humans with clear dislike. Jaiwo felt small but didn't show it. She was proud to represent Earth, even though the aliens towered over her. Their homeworlds had traveled space for thousands of years, while humans had only recently figured out faster-than-light travel. "Your species has barely mastered faster-than-light travel," said Counselor Vela. Her see-through tentacles waved in the air as if brushing away an insect. "Yet you petitioned to join our ranks?" The other council members murmured in agreement. Some didn't even try to hide their smirks. Jaiwo kept her face calm. This wasn't unexpected. "Humanity has much to offer, Counselor. Our adaptability, our innovative thinking." "Your naivety," cut in another counselor, a bulky creature with scales and massive eyes. The chamber filled with alien laughter. Jaiwo waited for the noise to die down. She had prepared for this meeting for months. The council's records showed they always treated newcomers this way. Their civilization was old and set in its ways, seeing themselves as the only proper form of advanced life. Counselor Drek, the oldest member with clicking mandibles like a giant insect, leaned forward on his hovering platform. "Beyond our protected territories lie species too savage for diplomacy. Species we've quarantined for the good of civilized space." Jaiwo exchanged a quick glance with Ambassador Do-Hyun Lee. This was exactly the opening they had hoped for. "Perhaps," said Jaiwo carefully, "what they need is a different approach. We request permission to establish diplomatic relations with these frontier species." The laughter that erupted was even louder than before. Some counselors actually bent over, their alien bodies shaking with amusement. Humans? Talking to the savage races? Impossible. Jaiwo stood straight, waiting. Earth's intelligence had studied the Council's records for years. They knew about the so-called monster species that lived at the edges of Council space. They also knew the Council had never really tried to understand these beings, they had simply labeled them as dangerous and moved on. "Very well," Drek finally said when the laughter died down. His mandibles clicked in clear amusement. "Attempt diplomacy with the Ratha in the Epsilon sector. When you fail, if you survive, perhaps you'll appreciate the wisdom of the Council." The other counselors seemed delighted by this suggestion. The Ratha were known for their violence. They had destroyed 3 Council diplomatic missions centuries ago. Since then, the Council had simply marked their territory as off-limits. As the human delegation bowed and turned to leave, whispers followed them. The aliens made bets on how quickly the humans would die. Outside the chamber, walking down the massive hallway of the Council station, Ambassador Do-Hyun moved closer to Jaiwo. "They think they've sent us on a suicide mission," he whispered. Jaiwo nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "Let them think that." What the Council didn't know was that Earth had been secretly studying the Ratha for years. Unmanned probes had observed their culture from a distance. Earth's best anthropologists and xenobiologists had analyzed the data. The Ratha weren't mindless killers, they had a complex honor system that the Council had completely misunderstood. The Council's approach had always been the same: arrive with massive ships, demand talks, and expect the other species to follow Council customs. The Ratha saw this as deeply disrespectful. As they boarded their ship, Jaiwo checked her tablet. The diplomatic team was ready. They had trained in Ratha-style combat as a show of respect. They brought gifts that aligned with Ratha values. Most importantly, they would approach as equals, not as superiors. "Captain, the ship is ready for departure," reported Navigator Minji Song. "Set course for the Epsilon sector," Jaiwo ordered. "And send a message to Earth Command, Phase 1 complete." As their ship pulled away from the Council station, Jaiwo looked at the stars ahead. Earth's leaders had long realized that humanity's place in the galaxy wouldn't be handed to them by the Council. Instead, they would build their own alliances with the species that the Council had rejected. The Council had called them Naïve. Soon they would learn that humans understood something the council had forgotten. Sometimes the most dangerous-looking creatures make the best friends, if only you take the time to understand them. The Endeavour slowed as it came out of hyperspace. The stars stopped stretching and settled into their normal dots of light. Ahead lay Ratha space, territory that no council ship had safely entered in over 300 years. Captain Jaiwo Park watched the main screen with calm eyes, but her heart beat faster. Everything they knew about the Ratha came from secret observations and old council records. The Ratha were like giant insects, with hard outer shells and multiple limbs. They were fierce warriors who valued strength and skill in battle. Final approach, announced Navigator Minji Song from her console. Her voice was steady but her fingers gripped the controls tightly. Detecting multiple Ratha vessels moving to intercept. The bridge went quiet. This was the moment they had planned for. The council had sent them here expecting failure or death. But Earth had studied the Ratha for years through hidden probes. They understood what the council had missed. "Transmit the greeting package we prepared," ordered Jaiwu. Lieutenant Jinwoo tapped at his console. "Sending now, Captain." The greeting was unlike anything the council would have sent. No demands to talk. No threats. Instead, it showed humans training in combat, hunting, and sports. It showed respect for the skills of warriors. It offered a challenge rather than a plea. 3 Ratha ships appeared on the screen. They were sharp like blades, moving with deadly grace. They surrounded the Endeavour, cutting off any escape. "They could destroy us in seconds," whispered Science Officer Juno. "But they won't," said Jaiwu. "Not yet. They're curious." The main screen flickered. A Ratha appeared, its body covered in shiny brown-black armor. Its compound eyes reflected the image of the human bridge. 2 antennae moved slowly above its head. "You enter our territory without warrior's escort," came the translation of the Ratha's clicks and hisses. "Explain before we dissect your vessel." Captain Jaiwo stood up from her chair. The crew watched nervously as she faced the alien warrior. This was the moment they had prepared for. "I am Captain Jaiwo Park of Earth. We come seeking knowledge exchange and mutual respect." She paused, then added the words that would either save or doom them. "We bring a challenge worthy of the legendary Ratha hunters." The Ratha's antennae twitched quickly. The translator identified this as a sign of interest. "Speak of this challenge," the Ratha commanded. "A hunt on neutral ground. Our best against yours. Not to death, to first yield." The Ratha was silent for a long moment. Then it made a series of rapid clicks that the translator couldn't fully capture. "Your challenge is accepted. Prepare to be boarded." 4 hours later, Jaiwo stood in a circular arena on a small moon. Her uniform was torn and sweat ran down her face. Across from her, the Ratha champion stood nearly 8 feet tall, its outer shell gleaming under the bright lights. Jaiwo's body ached. The Ratha was stronger and faster than her. But she had studied their movements. Earth had modified taekwondo techniques specifically for this encounter, focusing on leverage rather than power. The Ratha charged again, its forearms reaching for her. Jaiwo moved at the last second, using the Ratha's momentum to throw it off balance. She struck at a joint where the shell was thinner. The Ratha made a sound like breaking glass. Was it pain? Anger? Jaiwo couldn't tell. Around them, dozens of Ratha watched from raised platforms. They made clicking sounds as Jaiwo dodged another attack. She was tiring, but she wouldn't give up. The Ratha champion suddenly changed tactics. It dropped low and swept Jaiwo's legs. She fell hard but rolled away from the follow-up strike. She knew she couldn't win by strength alone. With a burst of speed, Jaiwo charged forward. She slid under the Ratha's guard and locked her arms around one of its limbs, applying pressure to a nerve point the scientists had identified. The limb went limp. The Ratha made a high-pitched sound and tried to shake her off. Jaiwo held on, feeling her muscles scream with effort. After 10 more seconds, the Ratha stopped fighting. It tapped the ground 3 times with its free hand, the signal of yield they had agreed upon. Jaiwo released her hold and stepped back, bowing deeply as she had been instructed to do. Her heart pounded as she waited for the Ratha's response. The arena went silent. Then the Ratha champion also bowed, not as deeply but clearly mimicking her gesture. The watching Ratha began to make a rhythmic clicking sound that the translators identified as approval. The Ratha commander approached Jaiwo. It towered over her, but there was something different in its posture now. Your species is small but fierce, the Ratha acknowledged. Perhaps there is something to discuss after all. Jaiwo bowed again, hiding her smile of relief. The first real contact with the Ratha had been made. The council had been wrong all along. Sometimes respect had to be earned through strength, not words. As the Ratha led her toward their meeting hall, Jaiwo thought about the council's faces when they returned, not as failures, but with Ratha allies at their side. The grand doors of the council chamber swung open. Captain Jaiwo Park entered first, walking tall in her formal Earth uniform. Ambassador Do-Hyun Lee followed in his diplomatic robes. But it was the third figure that made every council member freeze in shock. A Ratha warrior walked calmly between the humans. Cross stood nearly 9 feet tall, his armored exoskeleton catching the light. His forearms were folded in a peaceful gesture, not near the weapons at his sides. His compound eyes surveyed the room with calm interest. Impossible, whispered Counselor Vela, her translucent tentacles trembling. The council chamber, usually filled with murmurs and movement, fell completely silent. Some counselors actually backed away from the center floor. The Ratha were known killers, monsters that had destroyed every diplomatic mission sent their way for centuries. Yet here one stood, peaceful and controlled, alongside the humans who should have died in Ratha space. Ambassador Do-Hyun stepped forward, his voice breaking the silence. Honorable Council, we thank you for granting us this audience. As you can see, our diplomatic mission to the Ratha was successful. A low murmur spread through the chamber. Counselor Dreck's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. This is unexpected, said Counselor Vela, regaining her composure. We had not thought the Ratha capable of civilized discourse. Kraw's antennae twitched, but he remained silent. The humans had prepared him for the Council's attitude. The Ratha hives have expressed interest in limited trade agreements with both Earth and, potentially, the Council, continued Ambassador Do-Hyun. They have resources that would benefit us all. Counselor Dreck moved his platform forward. You have no idea what forces you're playing with, he warned. The Ratha have slaughtered millions across 3 sectors. Cross finally spoke, his translated voice booming across the chamber. Only those who approached with weapons instead of respect. The simple statement hung in the air. Many counselors looked uncomfortable. Your ships entered our space with weapons charged, continued Cross. You demanded we follow your ways. You never asked to learn ours. He gestured to the humans beside him. They came differently. Captain Jaiwo added, the Ratha have a complex honor culture. They respect strength and direct challenge. The council's approach seemed threatening to them, not diplomatic. The council members exchanged glances. This was not how they had expected this meeting to go. They had been certain the humans would either die or come back defeated, finally understanding why some species were deemed too dangerous. After hours of tense discussion, the council made its decision. Earth would be granted observer status in the council, a minor position with few real powers. The Ratha would be allowed limited trade access to certain council systems, under strict monitoring. As they left the chamber, Ambassador Do-Hyun smiled thinly at Captain Jaiwo. They still think we're children playing with fire, he whispered. Let them, Jaiwo replied. It works in our favor. Later that day, in a private chamber reserved for council leadership, Counselor Dreck paced nervously. Around him sat 5 other senior counselors, all looking troubled. The humans achieved in months what we couldn't in centuries, Dreck told them, his mandibles clicking with stress. Either they're extraordinarily lucky, or dangerously clever. Perhaps both, said Counselor Vela. My sources say they're sending teams to contact the Lith and even the Void Swimmers. The counselors looked even more alarmed. The Lith were crystalline beings who shattered council ships that entered their space. The void swimmers were barely understood plasma entities that most believed weren't even properly sentient. "It's a phase," said another counselor dismissively. "They're new to the galaxy. They'll learn." "Or perhaps we should learn from them," said Vela quietly, but no one acknowledged her comment. Far away from the council station, on Earth's lunar colony, Director Tae-hyun-cho sat in his secure office. On screens around him, reports flowed in from human diplomatic teams across the galaxy. "The Lith have agreed to preliminary talks," reported one team. "The void swimmers have responded to our mathematical communication attempts," said another. Tae-hyun nodded with satisfaction. Earth had deployed dozens of teams to contact species the Council had labeled as dangerous. While the Council watched the Ratha situation, these other missions moved forward quietly. His assistant entered with more reports. "Sir, the Deep Space Monitoring Station has picked up more of those signals." Tae-hyun frowned. For months, Earth's advanced listening posts had detected strange energy patterns from beyond the galactic rim. They had shared this information with the Council, but were told not to worry. "The Council believes we're naive," he told his staff as they gathered for their daily meeting. "Let them. Our monitoring stations are picking up signals from beyond the galactic rim that the Council is ignoring." He brought up a star map showing the signal origins. "Something is coming. The Council doesn't want to see it. But we will be ready, with or without them." His staff looked at the blinking red dots on the map with concern. "And our new friends?" asked one analyst. Tae-hyun smiled. "The Ratha know about these signals. So do the Lith. They've seen them before, long ago. That's why we need these alliances. The Council has forgotten that sometimes, the monsters you fear are the ones you want on your side when the real danger arrives." The alarm blared across every ship, station, and planet connected to the Galactic Council network. The emergency signal cut through all other communications, its urgent tone making hearts race across 1,000 worlds. "Attention all allied worlds. Unknown hostile forces have breached the Cygnus barrier. Multiple Council worlds under attack. This is not a drill." On the diplomatic vessel Seoul, Captain Jaiwo Park stood frozen before the main screen. The ship had been returning from a meeting with the Lith when the alert came through. Now she watched in horror as footage showed the Council's most advanced defense fleets being torn apart by strange black ships. "Magnify Sector 3, she ordered. The screen zoomed in on one of the attacking vessels. It was smooth and black like polished obsidian, with no visible weapons. Yet beams of dark energy shot from its surface, cutting Council ships in half. "The Harbingers," whispered Science Officer Juno Kim, his face pale. "Just as the void swimmers warned us." Jaiwo nodded grimly. For months, Earth's diplomatic team had communicated with the plasma-based void swimmers. They had shared ancient memories of dark ships that came from beyond the galaxy's edge. Ships that brought only destruction. The Council had dismissed Earth's warnings as paranoid fantasies based on talks with mindless energy clouds. Now those fantasies were destroying Council worlds. 3 planets already lost, reported Communications Officer Sabine. Tens of millions dead. The Council fleet is in full retreat from the Cygnus sector. On another screen, they could see the emergency Council session. The normally orderly chamber was in chaos. Councilors shouted over each other. Some were crying. Others appeared to be praying. Ambassador Do-hyun's face appeared on a private channel. "Earth is in the projected path," he reported, his usually calm face showing strain. "They're asking if we have any defense capabilities to contribute." Jaiwo exchanged looks with her bridge crew. After months of being treated as naive children, the Council was now asking for their help. "They still think we only have the Ratha," Jaiwo noted with a small, grim smile. "Should we tell them?" asked Juno. Before she could answer, a secure transmission cut through. Director Tae-hyun-cho's face appeared on the command screen. "Captain Park, the President has reviewed the situation." His voice was steady, but his eyes showed the weight of his words. Operation Chimera is authorized. Proceed to the rendezvous coordinates immediately. Jaiwoo felt a chill run down her spine. Operation Chimera had been planned for over a year, but she had hoped it would never be needed. Yes, sir. Seoul will be there. As the transmission ended, Jaiwoo turned to her crew. Set course for the Jupiter defense line. Maximum speed. 3 days later, the Harbinger fleet approached Earth's solar system. Their black ships moved in perfect formation, having crushed all resistance on their path through Council space. Council analysts predicted Earth would fall within hours. What the Harbingers found instead stunned the watching Council observers. Around Jupiter's orbit waited not just human ships, but vessels of 7 different species, all arranged in a battle formation no Council tactician had ever seen. The massive, blade-like ships of the Ratha formed the front line. Behind them, crystal vessels of the Lith reflected the sun's light in blinding patterns. Surrounding them, barely visible energy forms that could only be void swimmer vessels pulsed with power. There were others too, the hive ships of the Meraki that the Council had quarantined 2 centuries ago, the living vessels of the Dren that had been declared too primitive for contact, and more. Species that the Council had labeled as too dangerous, too different, or too alien to deal with. All now stood together, protecting Earth. On the Seoul, now stationed with the human fleet, Jaiwoo received the transmission she had been waiting for. All Allied forces in position, reported the Ratha Commander Kraz. The human plan is ready. Jaiwoo nodded. Remember, we need to hold them at Jupiter. Earth's defense system needs 12 more hours to fully activate. What the Council didn't know, what Earth had kept secret while building these unlikely alliances, was that humans had been preparing for this day since they first detected the strange signals. Deep under Earth's surface, a weapon system designed with technology from all their new allies was nearly ready. The first wave of Harbinger ships approached Jupiter. They moved with the same deadly purpose that had destroyed the Council fleets. All ships, execute Battle Plan Theta, ordered Jaiwoo. The Allied fleet moved in a way that confused the Council observers watching from safe distances. The Ratha ships charged forward, seemingly suicidal. The Lith vessels fired crystal beams that seemed to miss the enemy entirely. The void swimmers vanished completely. But then something strange happened. The Harbinger ships began to slow. The beams that had cut through Council defenses like paper now scattered harmlessly off Ratha hulls reinforced with Lith crystal. And where the void swimmers had vanished, Harbinger ships suddenly began to spin out of control, their energy systems disrupted by the plasma beings now inside their hulls. It's working, whispered Juno in amazement. Jaiwoo allowed herself a small smile. The Council had spent centuries keeping these species apart, seeing them all as threats. They never imagined what might happen if someone brought them together instead, if someone found the strengths in their differences rather than fearing them. Maintain formation, she ordered. We only need to hold for 12 more hours. The battle for Earth had begun. The emergency council meeting had fallen apart. Councilors shouted at each other, blaming one another for the disasters. 3 more council worlds had fallen to the Harbingers in just 2 days. No defense seemed to work against the black ships. We should evacuate the core worlds, shouted one councilor. Where would we go? They follow all retreat paths, yelled another. The massive doors of the chamber suddenly opened. The arguing stopped as all eyes turned to see Captain Jaiwoo Park walking in. Ambassador Do Hyun Lee followed close behind her. But what silenced the council completely was who came next. A towering Ratha warrior entered, his chitinous armor bearing battle marks. Behind him glided a Lith, its crystal body catching the light and breaking it into rainbows. Then came a void swimmer, its plasma form contained in a special field that made it look like a walking star. For other beings followed, species that the council had labeled too dangerous to speak with. What is the meaning of this? Demanded Councillor Drek, his mandibles clicking rapidly in alarm. These beings are not permitted in council space, let alone this chamber. Councillor Vela's tentacles wrapped protectively around herself. Security, she called, but no guards rushed in. They were too busy fighting a losing war. Salvation, replied Jaiwoo simply. She wore a battle uniform now, not the diplomatic clothes from her last visit. Her face showed the tiredness of someone who had been fighting for days. While you dismissed us as naive, we built relationships you thought impossible. Ambassador Dohayan stepped forward and activated the main screen that dominated the chamber wall. Please observe. The screen lit up, showing the space near Neptune in Earth's solar system. The council members gasped as they saw the massive battle taking place. Harbinger ships moved forward in their unstoppable formation, but they weren't unstoppable anymore. The council watched in amazement as Ratha boarding ships attached to the larger Harbinger vessels. Ratha warriors cut their way inside to fight hand-to-hand, something no council species had been brave enough to try. Lith crystal ships fired beams that somehow bent around Harbinger shields. Void swimmers phased directly into enemy engine systems, disrupting them from inside in ways council scientists had thought impossible. 2 days ago, the Harbingers entered your solar system, said Counselor Vela, struggling to understand. How did you organize this? We've been organizing it for over a year, explained Jaiwu. When our deep space monitors first detected their approach. The species you feared, Ambassador Dohayan added, gesturing to the alien representatives who stood silently watching, are the ones best equipped to fight an enemy like the Harbingers. The Lith encountered them a millennium ago. The Void Swimmers recognized their energy signatures. The Crystal and Lith representative stepped forward. Its voice came through a translator, sounding like chiming bells. We tried to warn the Council 300 years ago. You called us liars and quarantined our space. You knew this threat was coming, accused Counselor Vela, her voice shaking. We suspected, corrected Jaiwo calmly. And unlike the Council, we didn't let prejudice prevent preparation. She nodded to the Ratha warrior, who activated a small device. A holographic map appeared in the center of the chamber, showing battle plans and formation strategies that looked nothing like Council military doctrine. Each species brings something unique, Jaiwu explained. The Ratha know hand-to-hand combat that works against the Harbinger foot soldiers. The Lith understand the crystal technology that powers Harbinger shields. The Void Swimmers can disrupt their energy systems. And what do humans bring? Asked a counselor skeptically. Jaiwu smiled slightly. We bring everyone together. We listen. We adapt. We find ways for different strengths to work as one. The council chamber was silent as the members watched the battle on the screen. For the first time, the Harbingers were being pushed back. 3 weeks later, in the same chamber, a very different ceremony took place. The combined forces of Earth and its 7 allied species had pushed the Harbinger fleet back beyond the galactic rim. Special weapons developed by the Alliance had sealed the routes the Harbingers had used to enter the galaxy. The Council, humbled by their failure in Earth's success, formally recognized Earth as a full member. They also granted provisional status to the 7 species they had once feared and isolated. After the ceremony, as the chambers emptied, Counselor Drek approached Captain Jaiwu. The old counselor looked tired, his once bright exoskeleton now dull with stress. Perhaps, he admitted quietly, there was wisdom in what we saw as naivety. Jaiwu nodded, accepting the closest thing to an apology she would get from the proud counselor. In our history, counselor, she said gently, those who build walls to keep monsters out often discover too late which side of the wall the real monsters were on. Drek's mandibles clicked softly as he considered her words. You have changed the council forever, Captain Park. Good, said Jaiwu. The galaxy is too big and too dangerous for any of us to face alone. As she left the chamber with her unlikely allies, the representatives of 7 once feared species now walking as equals through council halls, Jaiwu thought about the long road ahead. There would be challenges in bringing these different cultures together. But they had proven that understanding could overcome fear. Sometimes, the monsters you fear become the friends you need most when real danger arrives.